There is a prophecy hidden in plain sight, yet veiled from the eyes of the world. A secret few have dared to see, because it does not speak with the voice of comfort, but with the voice of awakening. From the beginning, the Word declared that nothing is concealed that will not be revealed. And now, the veil is lifting. This prophecy is not shouted from the rooftops, nor does it fill the headlines of the nations. It whispers in the ancient patterns, in the cycles of time, in the shadows of history repeating itself. It is written in the rise and fall of empires, in the trembling of the earth, in the turning of the heavens. It tells us that what was will be again, and what has passed away shall return in a greater measure. The nations rage, rulers boast of their power, yet the prophecy unveils a truth they cannot stop. It declares that every kingdom built on pride will fall, every throne of arrogance will be shaken, and only what is rooted in the eternal will endure. And the sign of this hidden prophecy is already unfolding. Look around the confusion of the nations, the shaking of economies, the wars, the rumors, the collapsing of foundations. These are not random. They are the signs of a greater reality breaking through. It is a call, a warning, and a promise, a call to turn back, to awaken from slumber, a warning that time is not forever, and a promise that those who align their lives with what is everlasting will stand when all else falls. The secret prophecy is not about fear, but about preparation. For those who discern it, it is not an end, but the doorway to a greater beginning. There is a mystery, a truth that has been hidden since the beginning, a reality that few have ever discerned, yet has been present in every age and every generation, woven into the very fabric of existence. A hidden prophecy, not proclaimed by the kings of the earth, not announced by the voices of the media, not carved into monuments of stone, but written in the eternal word and echoed in the heartbeat of creation itself. It is the prophecy concealed, the prophecy that the world overlooks, the prophecy that lies in silence until the appointed time when it must be revealed. From the beginning of days, there has been a pattern, a whisper of destiny that flows through the rise and fall of nations, the victories and defeats of empires, the shaking of kingdoms and the turning of ages. But the eyes of the world are blind to it because they seek the noise of the obvious, the grandeur of the spectacular, the clamor of human power. Yet the eternal mysteries are often hidden in plain sight, in the quiet movements, in the unseen hand that turns the wheel of history. This hidden prophecy is not a creation of man. It is not born of imagination or speculation. It is the voice of eternity written before the foundations of the earth. It is a thread that weaves through Scripture, through the ancient covenants, through the judgments of old, and through the promises yet to come. The prophets of ages past saw glimpses of it, spoke fragments of it, but the fullness remained concealed until the appointed time. It is the mystery of cycles, the unfolding of divine patterns, the repetition of events that seem new but are ancient echoes of what has already been. What is hidden is not absent. What is concealed is not gone. It is only waiting for the eyes that can see and the ears that can hear. And this hidden prophecy declares that nothing under heaven is random. Nothing happens without meaning. No event unfolds without purpose. The wars, the disasters, the shakings of nations, the collapsing of foundations, none of these are accidents. They are signs, each one a piece of the puzzle, each one pointing back to the truth that has been concealed from the eyes of the multitudes, but revealed to those who seek with discernment. Consider the empires of old, the glory of Egypt, the majesty of Babylon, the pride of Rome. Each one rose in power, seemed invincible, declared themselves eternal, and yet each one fell. Their downfall was not merely the result of armies or politics or human schemes. It was the outworking of a pattern, the revealing of the hidden prophecy that all who rise in arrogance will fall, that all who defy the eternal will meet their appointed end. The fall of these kingdoms is a shadow, a foretelling, an echo of what will come again. And so it is in our time. Nations boast of their wealth, rulers exalt in their power, cultures proclaim their wisdom, yet the hidden prophecy declares something else. It whispers that the greater the pride, the swifter the fall, the higher the tower built on arrogance, the more certain its collapse. The prophecy unveils that what was shall be again, that history is not a straight line, but a cycle turning again and again until the mystery is fulfilled. The world does not see it. They see only the surface, the visible, the material. They believe history is random, progress is permanent, and empires will endure forever. But those who know the hidden prophecy understand that what seems permanent is temporary, what seems secure is fragile, and what seems unshakable is destined to be shaken. For it is written that only what is rooted in the eternal can last, and all else is but dust in the wind. The hidden prophecy is not just written in the scriptures, it is written in creation itself. The seasons testify to it. The winter gives way to spring, the spring to summer, the summer to fall, and the cycle repeats again and again. The day fades into night, the night into dawn, and again the day begins. The tides rise and fall, the moon waxes and wanes, the stars move in their appointed courses. Everything in creation moves in cycles, in patterns and appointed times. And so too does history. The hidden prophecy is that what has been will be again, and the end is foreshadowed in the beginning. Even in our lives, the prophecy is written. We rise and we fall, we plant and we reap, we rejoice and we mourn, we live and we die. And yet even in death there is the whisper of resurrection, the sign that the cycle does not end in despair, but in redemption. The hidden prophecy is not a prophecy of fear, but a truth. It is the unveiling of the eternal order that the world ignores. Look at the times in which we live. The nations rage, economies tremble, societies crumble, morality collapses, and people ask why. But the answer is already written in the hidden prophecy. It was foretold that when nations abandon the eternal, they will descend into confusion. When they turn away from truth, they will embrace lies. When they cast off the ancient paths, they will stumble in darkness. The prophecy was spoken long ago, and now it is unfolding before our very eyes. And yet, it remains hidden from most, because the world does not want to see. The prophecy is concealed not because it cannot be known, but because it requires the eyes of faith to perceive it. It requires the willingness to look beyond the visible, beyond the material, beyond the noise of the age, and to discern the eternal patterns that lie beneath. Those who understand the hidden prophecy are not surprised by what they see. They are not shaken by the shaking of nations, nor are they blinded by the pride of empires. They know that it is all part of the cycle, all part of the mystery, all part of the pattern that has been unfolding since the beginning. They know that the downfall of kingdoms is not the end, but the prelude to the rising of what is eternal. The hidden prophecy is both a warning and a promise. A warning that nothing built on arrogance can endure, that all who exalt themselves will be humbled, that every tower of pride will be brought low. And a promise that those who root themselves in the eternal will stand when all else falls, that those who cling to what is everlasting will not be shaken, that those who align themselves with the truth will endure even as the world trembles. This is why the prophecy remains hidden from the eyes of the proud, but revealed to the humble. Because it is not a prophecy to flatter, but to awaken. It is not a prophecy to comfort the complacent, but to call forth the vigilant. It is not a prophecy of despair, but a preparation. It is given not to terrify, but to guide, to point the way, to reveal the path that leads through the storm. The hidden prophecy tells us that the end is not the end, but the beginning. That every fall is a doorway to redemption. That every collapse makes way for renewal. That the cycles of judgment are followed by the cycles of restoration. The nations may rise and fall, but the eternal kingdom will endure forever. The empires may crumble, but the promise will never fade. The shaking may come, but the foundation that is unshakable will remain. And so the hidden prophecy, though veiled to the world, is revealed to those who seek. It is the mystery of time, the rhythm of history, the eternal truth that whispers through creation and shouts through judgment. It is the reminder that nothing is random, nothing is meaningless, and nothing is beyond the reach of the eternal hand. It is the revelation that all things are moving toward a purpose, a fulfillment, an appointed hour. And though the world does not see it, the prophecy is unfolding even now in our days, in our generation, before our very eyes. History is not random, nor is it a straight line that marches endlessly forward into progress without pause. History moves in cycles, in patterns, in rhythms set long ago. What was will be again, and what has been written in the past becomes a shadow of what is yet to come. The world imagines that every age is unique, that the present has no resemblance to the past, but the hidden reality is that every empire, every nation, every generation walks a path already traced. The footprints of those who came before are beneath our own, and the lessons of yesterday are the warnings of today. From the first civilization, man has repeated himself. Nations rise in power, wealth multiplies, arrogance grows, and the people turn from the one who gave them breath. They exalt their own strength, their own wisdom, their own gods made in their own image. They boast of invincibility, of permanence, of being the pinnacle of history. And then, without warning, The cycle unfolds again as it always has. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, Greece, Rome. The pattern does not change. They ascended to heights that dazzled the world. They ruled with iron. They stretched their influence across the earth. Yet now they exist only as ruins, as broken stones in deserts and museums, as names written in history books. The cycle spoke the same prophecy to them all. Pride leads to downfall, arrogance to ruin, and every empire built on sand must collapse. But the prophecy does not only apply to kingdoms and nations, it speaks to the world itself. Creation testifies to it. The earth moves in seasons, not in straight lines. Winter does not last forever, nor does summer reign without end. Each gives way to the next, and each returns again in its appointed time. The cycle of day and night repeats without fail. The tide rises and falls, the moon waxes and wanes. Even the beating of the heart, the rhythm of breath, the very essence of life is a cycle. And so too is the history of man. The prophets spoke of it in shadows. Ecclesiastes declared that what has been is what will be, that there is nothing new under the sun. The book of Daniel revealed the succession of empires, one after another, each rising, each falling, each leaving its mark upon the earth. The Revelation showed the cycles of judgment, the opening of seals, the sounding of trumpets, the pouring of bowls, each a rhythm that returns again and again until the appointed end. The cycle of history is not chaos but design, not accident but prophecy. Look at the present age. The world believes itself to be enlightened, modern, beyond the mistakes of the past. Nations boast of progress. Societies pride themselves in knowledge, and cultures exalt human achievement as though they had become gods themselves. But the hidden prophecy reveals otherwise. We are not progressing into something new. We are repeating what has already been. The arrogance of Babel rises again as man seeks to build towers of technology and power that reach into the heavens. The corruption of Sodom returns in the defiance of morality, in the exaltation of what was once shameful. The pride of Rome rises again in the strength of empires that boast of their dominance and in cultures that worship pleasure and wealth above all. The cycle has returned, and the signs are the same. And just as the patterns of the past unfolded in judgment, so too shall they now. For no cycle is broken until it fulfills its end. The judgment that came upon Egypt, Babylon, and Rome is not a story of ancient times. It is a warning of the present. The same causes bring the same consequences, and the same rebellion leads to the same fall. The arrogance of nations today is no different than the arrogance of empires of old. They defy the eternal, cast off his ways, exalt their power, and declare themselves sovereign. But the cycle cannot be broken by human pride. The prophecy is sure what will be again. Even in smaller measures, the cycles are evident. Economic systems rise in prosperity and fall into collapse. Societies grow strong, then weaken from within. Families prosper, then fall apart when they forget their foundation. Individuals rise in strength, then stumble when pride overtakes them. The pattern repeats because it is written into the very order of creation. It is a law as certain as gravity. What is sown is reaped. What is exalted in arrogance is humbled in shame. What forgets its roots is torn from the ground. Yet in the cycle there is also hope, for judgment is not the final word. Just as the cycle of winter gives way to spring, so too do cycles of judgment give way to redemption. The fall of empires opens the door for renewal. The collapse of pride makes way for humility. The shaking of foundations clears the ground for rebuilding on what is eternal. Babylon fell, but from its ashes the people of Israel were restored. Rome collapsed, but the message of truth spread across the nations. The cycle does not end in destruction alone, but in the possibility of renewal if those who witness it have the wisdom to turn. The hidden prophecy of cycles calls us to discernment, to see the patterns not as random accidents of history, but as signs pointing to a greater reality. When we see nations boasting of their permanence, we must remember Egypt. When we see cultures glorying in their corruption, we must remember Sodom. When we see empires stretching their power across the earth, we must remember Babylon and Rome. When we see the world worshiping itself, we must remember the Tower of Babel. The cycle is not new. It is the same prophecy repeating, declaring to every generation the same truth. No kingdom built on arrogance will endure, and only what is rooted in the eternal will stand. And so, the cycle serves both as a warning and as a guide. A warning that the mistakes of the past are not dead. They are alive, repeating, unfolding again, and a guide to prepare, to stand on what cannot be shaken, to build not on the sands of pride, but on the rock of what is eternal. For though the cycles of nations turn, there is one kingdom that does not fall, one foundation that is unshakable, one truth that is not subject to time. Those who understand the cycles do not despair when they see the fall of nations, for they know it has all been foretold. They do not panic when they see the shaking of the earth, for they know it is the unfolding of prophecy. They are not blinded by the pride of empires, for they know that such pride always leads to downfall. They see beyond the surface, beyond the noise, beyond the chaos, to the pattern that has been written since the beginning. The cycles of history are not merely a study of the past, they are a revelation of the present and a prophecy of the future. They reveal that everything is moving toward fulfillment, that nothing is without purpose, that every rise and every fall is part of the greater plan. The world may scoff, but the cycles testify against it. The ruins of empires are the witnesses. The fallen thrones are the evidence. The silence of once great nations is the voice that still speaks. What was, will be again. Therefore, to understand the cycles is to be awakened. To see the hidden prophecy is to prepare. For if history is repeating, then we are walking paths already walked. If the signs of old are rising again, then so too is the judgment that followed them. And if the cycle is unbroken, then we stand in the shadow of what is to come. The nations rage, but the pattern is sure. The kingdoms boast, but the prophecy is unfolding. And as it was in the days of Egypt, as it was in the days of Babylon, as it was in the days of Rome, so it shall be again. Every throne of man rises with the illusion of permanence. Every ruler believes his power is unshakable. Every empire declares that it will endure forever. Every nation convinces itself that it stands secure. Yet the hidden truth woven through the ages is this: pride always leads to downfall, arrogance always precedes ruin, and every kingdom not founded upon the eternal is destined to collapse. This is not an opinion, nor the speculation of men. It is the decree written into the order of existence itself. It is the pattern of history, the prophecy that has echoed from the beginning of time, unfolding again and again before the eyes of the world, though the world refuses to see it. The arrogance of nations is nothing new. Egypt exalted itself, boasting of its gods, its pyramids, its wealth, its armies. Pharaoh declared himself divine, a living God who ruled over men and commanded even the forces of nature. But in the end, the river turned to blood, the land was struck with plagues, the firstborn were taken, and Pharaoh's armies drowned beneath the waters. Egypt's pride was its undoing, and its glory became its shame. The lesson was clear: no power, no wealth, no throne can stand when it lifts itself against the eternal. Babylon rose in majesty, its hanging gardens counted among the wonders of the world, its walls stretching higher and stronger than any other, its kings ruling with dominion across the earth. Nebuchadnezzar walked upon his palace roof and declared, "Is this not Babylon the great that I have built by my mighty power?" In that very moment, his glory was stripped away, his mind taken, his throne shaken, and he was driven into the wilderness to eat grass like an animal. Pride lifted him up, but judgment brought him down. The might of Babylon turned to dust, and its name became a symbol of arrogance judged by heaven. Rome followed in the same path. Its armies conquered nations, its emperors ruled with iron, its culture and law shaped the known world. But as its pride grew, so too did its corruption. It exalted power, wealth, and pleasure above truth. It declared its emperors gods, demanding worship from men. And when it turned its might against the people of faith, when it mocked the eternal and defied his ways, its foundations began to crumble. Rome, which seemed invincible, collapsed not by enemies alone, but by rot from within. Its glory faded, its empire dissolved, and the ruins remain as a testimony to the prophecy: every kingdom built on arrogance must fall. The pattern is unbroken, the prophecy sure. It is not only ancient empires, but every nation that forgets the eternal. They rise with strength, they flourish with wealth, they boast of their greatness. They lift their laws above the laws of heaven, they exalt their will above truth, they glorify sin and mock righteousness. For a time, it appears they prosper. For a time their power grows, for a time their voice fills the earth. But in the hidden counsel of eternity, their fall is already written. The higher they exalt themselves, the swifter the descent. The greater their pride, the more devastating their ruin. This prophecy is not confined to nations. It speaks to every throne, every leader, every ruler who sets himself above the eternal. The kings of the earth plot, they scheme, they declare their independence from heaven. They pass decrees that defy truth. They proclaim themselves the masters of destiny. They boast that they cannot be moved. Yet the word is sure. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. For the thrones of men are fragile things. They rise like mist in the morning and vanish before the heat of the day. Kings come and go, rulers ascend and fall, but only one throne endures. The eternal throne is unshakable, and all who exalt themselves against it will be brought low. Look at the world in our own time. Nations boast of their power, rulers exalt in their might, societies glory in their rebellion. They mock truth, rewrite morality, and proclaim themselves sovereign. They believe that their strength will last, that their empires will stand, that their systems are unshakable. Yet the prophecy declares the same truth, that has judged every age, every kingdom built on pride is a kingdom already doomed. The shaking of the present is the shadow of the greater shaking to come. The collapse of foundations in our time is not a mystery. It is the outworking of the prophecy that pride leads only to ruin. The fall does not always come in an instant. Sometimes it comes slowly, like the crumbling of a wall weakened from within. A nation abandons its foundation, and its morals decay. Families break, societies unravel, corruption spreads, truth is silenced, and in time the glory turns to dust. Other times the fall comes suddenly, like a tower struck in a single moment. Armies invade, economies collapse, disasters strike, and in a single day what seems secure is gone. Whether slow or sudden, the end is the same. Arrogance gives way to downfall. And yet in every fall there is also a revelation. For the fall of man's pride reveals the truth of eternity. When the kingdoms of men collapse, the kingdom of heaven stands unmoved. When thrones fall, the throne of the eternal remains. When power fades, his power is revealed. The downfall of empires is not merely judgment, it is testimony. It declares to every generation that there is only one true foundation, only one lasting kingdom, only one eternal throne. This prophecy is also personal. It is not only for kings and nations, but for every life. For just as nations fall in their pride, so do individuals. A man lifts himself in arrogance, trusts in his wealth, exalts his own strength, and imagines himself secure. But the same law applies. Pride comes before destruction, and arrogance before a fall. No life built on self can endure. No man who defies the eternal can stand. And yet, the collapse of pride is also the doorway to redemption. For it is when a man is humbled that he finds truth, when he falls that he can be lifted up, when his own strength fails that he discovers the strength that does not fade. So it has been with nations, with kings, with empires, with individuals, and so it will be again. For the prophecy is unbroken. It warns every nation of our age, every ruler of our time, every empire that boasts of permanence. You are not unshakable. Your foundations will be tested. Your pride will be judged. Your throne will be shaken. The arrogance of this age will meet the same end as the arrogance of ages past, and only what is rooted in the eternal will endure. The prophecy is both judgment and mercy. Judgment because no arrogance can stand before truth, no rebellion can outlast eternity, no kingdom of pride can escape collapse. Mercy because the fall reveals the fleeting nature of human pride and calls all who witness it to turn, to awaken, to stand upon the foundation that cannot be moved. For every throne of man falls, but there is a throne that never has and never will. Every kingdom of arrogance collapses, but there is a kingdom of humility, righteousness, and truth that endures forever. And it is this kingdom and this kingdom alone that will remain when all else has crumbled to dust. The signs are unfolding now. They are not distant, not far off, not confined to ancient pages or future ages. They are here in our days, in our generation, before our eyes. The prophecy concealed for ages is revealing itself in the events that fill the world around us. What once was spoken as warning is now taking shape as reality. The world looks and sees confusion, unrest, chaos, disaster, and decline. Yet those with eyes to see recognize that none of it is random. Each shaking is part of a greater mystery. Each crisis is part of the unfolding pattern. Each event a piece of the ancient prophecy coming alive. Look at the nations. They rage and plot against one another. Wars break out. Rumors of wars spread across the earth. Conflicts flare where once there was peace. Leaders boast of their strength. Armies clash. Borders crumble. And alliances fracture. Yet these are not mere accidents of politics or failures of diplomacy. They are the outworking of the prophecy. For it was declared long ago that nations would rise against nations, kingdoms against kingdoms, that the earth would be filled with violence as it was in the days of Noah. What was foretold is now reality, and what unfolds on the world stage is the sign that the times are moving toward fulfillment. Look at the earth itself. It trembles and shakes. Disasters strike with increasing frequency, storms grow stronger, fires rage with greater intensity, floods sweep away what men thought secure. The ground beneath us quakes and the heavens above us shift. These are not only natural events, not only scientific phenomena. They are signs, reminders that creation itself groans, that the world is not as it was, that the order of nature itself testifies to the prophecy. For it was declared that in the last days the earth would shake, the seas would roar, the powers of the heavens would be moved, and the very foundations of creation would tremble. Look at the economies of the world. Once mighty and stable, they now shake like fragile structures in the wind. Markets collapse, currencies falter, debt multiplies, and wealth proves to be fleeting. Nations that once boasted of prosperity find themselves in confusion. People who trusted in riches discover how fragile their foundations truly are. This too is part of the unfolding prophecy. For it was written that in the day of shaking, men would cast their gold into the streets, that wealth would fail, that no earthly treasure could save when judgment comes. The collapse of economies is not only a matter of numbers and markets, it is the sign that all foundations built on material wealth are destined to fall. Look at the culture. Morality collapses, truth is mocked, sin is exalted, and what was once considered shameful is now celebrated. Laws are rewritten, foundations overturned, righteousness cast aside. The very order of life, family, and creation is challenged and replaced with confusion. People call evil good and good evil. They exalt darkness and despise light. They glory in rebellion and laugh at holiness. This too was foretold. The prophecy declared that in the last days people would be lovers of self, lovers of pleasure, rather than lovers of truth, arrogant, disobedient, ungrateful, unholy, and without natural affection. It is not a new thing. It is the cycle repeating, the prophecy unfolding. The corruption of our age mirrors the corruption of Sodom, the arrogance of Babel, the rebellion of ancient Israel. And just as judgment came then, so too will it come now. Look at the confusion of the world. Nations no longer know who they are. Leaders stumble without wisdom. Governments are paralyzed, and societies fracture into chaos. There is division everywhere. Division in homes, division in nations, division in cultures. Truth is no longer the foundation. Instead, lies and deception rule the day. People no longer know what is right or wrong, what is true or false, what is man or woman, what is life or death. The world swims in confusion, and this too is a sign. For it was written that when nations turn away from the eternal, they will be given over to delusion, that their minds will be darkened, that they will believe lies in place of truth. The confusion we see is not random. It is the prophecy taking form. All these things together form a picture, a tapestry of signs that declare the times. Each shaking, each collapse, each act of rebellion is part of the greater unfolding. It is as though the ancient words are rising from the page and becoming reality in the headlines of today. The wars, the disasters, the collapsing of economies, the crumbling of morality, these are not isolated. They are connected, woven together by the thread of prophecy, each one leading to the next, each one accelerating the cycle, each one pointing to the fulfillment yet to come. The world sees only chaos, but those with discernment see prophecy. The world calls it coincidence, but those with eyes to see recognize design. The world says it is the end of progress, but those who understand know it is the revelation of truth. For the signs were always foretold, the shaking was always promised, the collapse was always written. We are not witnesses of random events, but of the ancient mystery breaking into our time. And yet, the signs are not only warnings of judgment, they are also calls to awaken. For every shaking is a trumpet, every collapse a wake-up call, every disaster a cry for repentance. The signs do not come to destroy without warning. They come to give time, to call people back before the final moment, to awaken those who slumber in the illusion of security. Each event whispers the same truth: the world as it is will not endure, and only what is rooted in the eternal can remain. The danger is not in the signs themselves, but in ignoring them. For just as in the days of Noah, the people of the world saw the warnings, yet paid them no mind. They ate and drank, they built and planted, they lived as if nothing would change, until the flood came and swept them away. So too in the days of Lot the signs were clear, the corruption visible, the warning sounded. Yet the people laughed, mocked, and carried on with their lives until fire rained down. And so too now, the signs are unfolding, the prophecy is visible, but the world distracts itself with entertainment, with wealth, with pleasure, refusing to see the truth. But to those who discern, the signs are gifts. They reveal the times, they prepare the heart, they awaken the soul. They declare that we are closer than we realize, that the world is moving swiftly toward a climax, that the words spoken long ago are even now coming to pass. To see the signs is not to fear, but to be ready. To witness the prophecy unfold is not to despair, but to align one's life with what cannot be shaken. The signs are not far off possibilities. They are here, they are now. Every shaking of the earth, every collapse of the economy, every rebellion of culture, every trembling of nations is part of the greater unfolding. The prophecy is alive, the words are true, and the time is at hand. The question is not whether the signs are real, they are. The question is whether we will see them, whether we will hear their message, whether we will awaken before the final shaking comes. For the signs are not silent, they are shouting to all who have ears to hear, proclaiming that the prophecy is no longer hidden, but revealed in our days. It is a call, a warning, and a promise. A call to turn back from the wayward path, to awaken from slumber, to lift the eyes from the fading illusions of the world and fix them upon what endures forever. The prophecy does not come to entertain curiosity, nor to satisfy idle speculation. It comes to summon, to stir, to pierce through the noise of life and awaken the soul to reality. For the greatest danger is not the fall of kingdoms or the collapse of nations. It is the slumber of hearts that live as though nothing will change, as though the world as it is will endure forever. And so the prophecy comes as a call to awaken, to shake us from our sleep, to remind us that time is not endless, that every day moves us closer to the appointed hour. It is a call that comes not with the sound of comfort, but with the urgency of a trumpet. It calls each life to choose, to stand, to decide where it is rooted. For when the kingdoms of the world are shaken, when the thrones fall and the empires collapse, only those who are anchored in what is eternal will remain unshaken. The call is not for tomorrow is not guaranteed. The call is for now, for today, for this very hour. It does not whisper of delay, but cries with urgency, awaken, for the time is short. And it is also a warning, for the prophecy does not veil the consequences of ignoring its voice. It warns that to continue in pride is to walk toward downfall, that to exalt arrogance is to invite collapse, that to turn away from truth is to embrace destruction. The warning is not given in anger, but in mercy, for mercy speaks before judgment falls, just as Noah sounded the alarm before the flood, just as prophets cried out before the fall of Israel, just as warnings were given to Babylon before its collapse. So now the prophecy warns our age. It declares that the path we walk is not new, but ancient. It is the same path that led to judgment in the past, and the same end awaits those who refuse to turn. The warning is not meant to destroy, but to save. It is the hand extended before the edge of the cliff, the cry given before the walls crumble, the light shining before the darkness overwhelms. Yet to those who mock, to those who refuse to hear, to those who harden their hearts, the warning becomes judgment itself. For the voice of truth, once rejected, becomes the very testimony against them. The warning is mercy now, but it will become evidence then. That is why the prophecy pleads, do not ignore, do not dismiss, do not delay. For the time will come when the call will no longer sound, when the warning will no longer be given, when the door once open will be shut. And yet, beyond the call and beyond the warning, there is also a promise. For the prophecy is not only of shaking and judgment, but of hope and endurance. It promises that those who align themselves with what is eternal will not be swept away when all else falls. It promises that those who hear the call and turn will find mercy, that those who humble themselves will be lifted up, that those who surrender their pride will be restored. It promises that though the kingdoms of this world collapse, there is a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Though the thrones of men crumble, there is a throne that endures forever. Though the empires of pride turn to dust, the foundation of truth stands unbroken. This promise is not a theory, not a dream, not a wish. It is as certain as the rising of the sun, as sure as the turning of the seasons, as unshakable as the Eternal himself. For every fall of man's pride, every collapse of empires, every shaking of nations has testified to it. Babylon fell, but the people of faith endured. Rome collapsed, but the truth spread across the earth. Egypt's might was broken, but the covenant remained. In every age, when the kingdoms of men fell, the kingdom of heaven remained. And so it shall be in our age, and in every age until the end. The call, the warning, and the promise are not distant. They are personal. They come to every nation, but also to every life. Each one of us stands in the same choice as the kingdoms of old, to exalt pride or to humble ourselves, to walk in rebellion or to turn back to truth, to build on sand or to build on the rock. The prophecy speaks not only to rulers and empires, but to hearts and souls. For just as nations collapse in arrogance, so do lives. And just as nations can find restoration in humility, so can lives be lifted up when they turn. The call comes to awaken every soul from the illusion that life is endless. It reminds us that breath is a gift, that time is fleeting, that tomorrow is not guaranteed. It calls us to live not for the temporary, but for the eternal. It warns us not to place our trust in wealth, for wealth fades, not to place our hope in power, for power collapses, not to build our lives upon pleasure, for pleasure withers. It calls us to root our lives in what cannot be shaken, to anchor ourselves in truth, to cling to what endures forever, and the promise assures that those who do will stand. Though the world may tremble, they will not be moved. Though nations collapse, their foundation will hold. Though the storms rage, they will remain. For their hope is not in what is seen, but in what is unseen. Their trust is not in the kingdoms of men, but in the kingdom that endures. Their foundation is not in sand, but in rock. The prophecy calls us to see beyond the moment, to lift our eyes beyond the noise of the present, beyond the chaos of the times, beyond the pride of nations. It calls us to discern the eternal in the midst of the temporal, to see the unshakable amidst the shaking, to live not for what is passing, but for what will remain. It warns us not to be deceived by the glitter of empires, for they will fade. It warns us not to be blinded by the pride of rulers, for they will fall. It warns us not to be lulled into sleep by the comfort of the age, for that comfort is but a dream that will vanish. But it also promises that those who heed the call will find peace in the storm, strength in the shaking, hope in the collapse. They will see the fall of kingdoms, but know they belong to a kingdom that does not fall. They will watch the collapse of thrones, but know they serve a throne that endures forever. They will walk through the darkness, but know that the light shines even there. The call, the warning, the promise, they are all one. They are the voice of eternity breaking into time, the hand of mercy reaching into the midst of judgment, the light of hope shining into the darkness of the world. They are not distant, not far away. They are here now in our days. They are spoken not only to the nations, but to us. And they will not cease until the final hour, when every kingdom has fallen, every throne has been shaken, every empire has turned to dust, and only what is eternal remains.